dancing their feet off.
It's a pity. I mean, I was Edward R. Murrow's assistant director, and I can just imagine what his reaction would be to the 6 o'clock news now. I mean, he would really, really be in an uproar over it. And, I mean, any semblance of purity, of high intentions, it has vanished, hasn't it? I mean, it's just, it's all the inquiry. I mean, it's really pretty shocking.
Yeah, I sometimes feel like I'm living in the World Network, but I'm here hanging under the desk maintaining standards, and what I always say to people, you have to learn to separate us out from all that's going on around us. But that should be true in every field. Look, there's a lot of trash published, committed to the printed page. Doesn't mean that the best work then is judged by those standards. And it's true in films. There's a lot of junk made. But the great films stand out, and we don't say, well, film has gone to hell in America. We ought to be able to do that. Just because we all come out of the same tube doesn't mean that we're all alike. Well, I think politics and the entertainment industry are similar. It's a lot about power. It is, pardon me, a lot about vanity. It is, as well, a lot about manipulation. About mass audiences and getting them to see your point of view. And it's a lot about being a star. It's a lot about who can light up a room. I've been at the White House at state dinners, the President of the United States and the presidents of other countries, with Fred Astaire, with a lot of well-known Hollywood people. And it's just astonishing to me to see them all kind of taking the measure of each other. Who's the bigger star here? It's human nature.
Washington talks about Hollywood in completely derogatory terms, right? I mean, Hollywood is something to be avoided, except when the White House Correspondents' Dinner happens and you want to invite some high-profile guests. So who are the big splashy guests every year? Warren Beatty, Ellen DeGeneres and Anne Heche, George Clooney. It's hilarious. So Washington hates Hollywood until it doesn't hate Hollywood. And I think that the attraction works both ways. I think most people in Hollywood, politics has no effect on their life except they're attracted to power. And Hollywood, money is the coin of the realm here. But it doesn't always buy you legitimacy. And somehow a lot of people in Hollywood, I think, look to Washington for a sense of legitimacy that lasts beyond the box office at your last picture. So there's a mutual attraction. It goes back a long way.
But at the same time, I think there's a danger here that the rest of the country feels left out somehow. It's a kind of conceit in the journalistic, political, and Hollywood community that all that we do, the rest of the world cares about, and we end up talking primarily to each other. And I think that's a danger.
Well, I think television's impact on our society has been leveling it to mediocrity. And I mean, through television, we have a generation that's coming into its own now that's almost illiterate.
And that's why I think, cartoonism is really upon us. I mean, I don't mean that you have to just see a cartoon. A lot of movies really are cartoons. They present situations, but they're really cartoon versions of it. And a lot of films that deal with certain kind of issues are sort of really like just basic cartoon, sitcom related in some way, and sort of like, twice removed from reality, as if reality itself is a little too frightening. So you want it to be a little removed, a little kind of fake in a way. So it'll be a little bit more palatable and a little more acceptable.
I said to Elia that because of the impact of television, I really thought that Eisenhower might be the last bald president that we would ever have. I didn't think that we could have president who didn't have hair, who wasn't a television personality.
I think that there is a lot of comment about the line between news and entertainment dissolving. But the fact of the matter is it was always a blurred line. You go back to the early days of newspaper in this century, in this country, Hearst was one of the great showmen of our time. He sold newspapers with a composition of the front page. The problem is that people always want to use just the good gray lady of the New York Times as their standard, when in fact journalism is a much broader spectrum than that. Then you move along. Radio in the earliest days had H.V. Kaltenborn, who had a very dramatic, kind of almost Shakespearean reading style. Lowell Thomas was one of the most popular broadcasters of all time. He was a great showman, so the line was blurred then. The most successful early television evening news program was Huntley and Brinkley. People didn't watch just for the content. They loved the casting. These two people played off each other with a kind of showbiz chemistry. And David made his mark with his wry observations and his twinkly style. So it's always been the case. Edward R. Murrow, one of the founding fathers of television news, appeared on camera in Savile Row suits, the cigarette dramatically lit and off to the side, enveloped in a cloud of smoke, using language I couldn't use on the air now because I would be accused of being self-important and above the heads of my audience. So the line has always been...
The movie's point is that the process has become a joke, right? I mean, you can't believe anything you see. I personally think a lot of it's driven by changing technology. I think a couple of things have happened. Speed. Information moves so quickly that it changes the requirements of anybody who's in the information business, whether you're the President of the United States or the press secretary or a reporter covering the White House or any other beat. And the other thing that's happened is, as the cost of technology has come down, there's been an explosion in the number of media outlets. The competition is incredible. And I think that's had effect of lowering standards. So you have people responding to the news cycle, which moves so fast that you no longer have the luxury of taking a couple days and sorting out the facts. For example, when the Cuban Missile Crisis happened, President Kennedy had 3 days to spend in the Oval Office, in the cabinet room, around the White House, talking to the Joint Chiefs, his other military advisors, other congressional leaders, praying, whatever he was doing, making what was an important decision as the world was on the brink of nuclear war. If that happened today, we'd have CNN flying over Cuba with live helicopter shots and people camped out on the south lawn of the White House, or actually the north lawn of the White House, demanding a response from the president. And that ability, the time that decision makers have to make decisions has been incredibly compressed. The other thing that happens is that things move so fast that impressions get embedded in people's minds really quickly. When a story breaks, boom, you have really one shot to get into that opening shot when the story gets out, or you can lose control of it forever. And I think that's what's given rise to this incredibly aggressive game of spin, where you want to get your story out, you want to get it out fast, you want to get it out right away, you don't want to get beat, you don't want somebody else to define what's happening, because once it's out, you can't bring it back. If it's wrong, tough luck. So I think that's what's given rise, and I think that we only see as time goes forward that the media is going to become more diverse, faster, and quite frankly, less accountable. I mean, the internet's a great example. There's no accountability on the internet. Anybody can say anything they want. Even credible news organizations put stuff up on the internet and pull it down, So I think all of that, the long-term effect of that is, I think it creates a very difficult environment, but it's certainly going to mean, more spin, and, the whole news business becomes more like a ping pong match. Now, the good news in all that, actually, is I think people are a little bit skeptical. They don't believe everything they see on TV. They don't believe everything they read on the internet. They don't believe everything they read in the newspaper, and that's pretty healthy given the reality. I mean, they're pretty smart consumers of information. I think they'll become increasingly sophisticated as time goes on. So as opposed to becoming completely gullible and being able to be led around, I think they're just becoming more jaded, which is unfortunate, but they're not sheep. They're going to go off the edge of the cliff. And anybody who thinks they are is going to lose the game because they're smarter than that.
I'll do the same in his great name.
We only have certain visual images of the Gulf War. It's almost like a shared, collective. You say, well, my God, how come we don't have, that was it. That's all we got from it. It was incredibly controlled, and you could have faked any one of those pieces very easily. The way they show, the building and whatever. You could fake all of that. And that, in a sense, was one of the things when David, Mam, and I were discussing this project, is how much you can fake. And by the time, if you find out it's like true, it doesn't matter. We're onto something else. So the possibilities of faking images for whatever purpose is certainly possible. Will it happen? To what extent will it happen? That's the basis of WAG.
Good old shoe, stand up straight and proud the way he taught you to. And you might even get to heaven with a soul like that. Good old shoe.
Television has changed a lot in American politics, but you know what? Television's reality.